In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Before this program begins, before the cameras settle into conversation unfolds, we pause. We pause in the ancient tradition of Matt, the Kemetic principle of truth, justice, cosmic balance, and divine harmony that African people inscribed into the foundations of the world's first great civilization. Ma'at was not merely a law. She was a goddess. She was a standard. She was the feather against which every human heart was weighed. And tonight on this program, we invoke not a relic of this distant past, but as a living demand, a call to truth telling in a world that has long profited from its distortion. The African American struggle for dignity, freedom, and full humanity has always been, at its core, a struggle for Ma'at, for a world in which Black lives are weighed not against the interests of empire, but against the weight of universal human truth. Tonight, we come before that feather. We come willing to be weighed. We come tonight guided in the Sankofa, the sacred bird of the Akan people of Ghana, whose proverb teaches us, so were, final was, well, I can't get all of that, but it is not wrong to go back for what you forgot. The Sankofa files forward, but its head is turned back, not in retreat, but in retrieval. It carries an egg in its mouth, the future cradle in the act of remembering. Tonight's episode of America in Black and White is not a departure from our mission. It is the deepest expression of it. We are returning to the source, to the Nile Valley, to Kemet, to the dawn of human civilizations to retrieve what was stolen, suppressed, misattributed, and miseducated away from African people across centuries of colonialism and cultural war. This episode is a Sankofa. It is a return so that we may move forward with everything we are owed. And so we honor the ancestors who made this moment possible. We speak the name of Imhotep, the great physician, architect, and polymath of ancient Kemet, whose genius was so profound that he was defied in his own time, and whose name our guest carries with dignity and purpose. We speak the names of Queen Nefertiti and Pharaoh Ramses II, African sovereigners whose legacies adorn the museums of the world, even as the world debates the very Blackness they embodied. We speak the names of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, freedom architects of the American chapter of African resistance. We speak the name Marcus Garvey, the prophet of Pan-Africanism, who dared to imagine a Black world redeemed and reunited. We speak the name Chika Diop, this Senegalese scholar, physicist, and historian who proved with science, with linguistics, with melanin analysis and cultural anthropology that ancient Egypt was an African civilization, that the pharaohs were Black African people, that the story of human genius begins on African soil. We speak the name Molefi Keti Asante, the father of Afrocentric philosophy, who gave us the intellectual architecture to center the African experience to all scholarly inquiry. Tonight is not simply a history lesson. Tonight is the act of remembrance. Tonight is an act of resistance. Tonight is an act of reclamation. This moment belongs to the ancestors, and we dedicate it to them with full hearts and unwavering purpose. Now, let me introduce our guest for tonight, please. What if everything we were taught about the origins of civilization was incomplete or deliberately erased? What if the story of human genius, the story of organized society, of written language, of architecture, of medicine, of astronomy, of moral philosophy, what if that story did not begin where your textbook said it did? What if it began in Africa, not in a cave, not in a village, but in a civilization so sophisticated, so precisely engineered, so philosophically advanced that 2,000 years after its peak, the greatest minds in Greece, Socrates, Pythagoras, Plato, traveled its libraries to learn? I'm not asking you to take that on faith tonight. I am inviting you to follow the evidence, the same evidence that Dr. Diop spent a lifetime presenting to a world that did not want to accept it, and that Afrocentric historians have spent decades restoring to Black communities across the diaspora. Tonight, we take that journey together, and I promise you, you will not leave this show the same. The great Senegalese scholar, Dr. Diop, did not simply theorize that ancient Egypt was an African civilization. He proved it. Through comparative linguistics, through cultural analysis, through the study of the skeletal remains of the pharaohs, and through the testimony of the ancient Greeks themselves, who described the Egyptians as a dark-skinned, woolly-haired people, Diop constructed an ironclad case that Kemet, the Black land, was built by Black African people. This is not fringe scholarship. This is not wishful thinking. This is a documented, peer-reviewed, evidence-based historical research that mainstream academia has resisted with an urgency that itself tells a story. Because if the world fully accepts that Black African people built the first great civilization, the civilization that gave the world monotheism, surgery, architecture, philosophy, and cosmic science, then every hierarchy built on the myth of African inferiority collapses at its foundation. And tonight, we're not here to gently suggest that collapse. We're here to witness it, celebrate it, and document it. Tonight's episode of American Black and White is a special educational event unlike anything we have done in 4 seasons on this program. We have 2 extraordinary guests joining us, and together they represent something genuinely historic, 2 scholars, 2 worlds, 2 sides of one magnificent African story. The first is an African-American scholar of African diasporic history, a man who has taught in Midwestern universities, held civic office in Iowa, built consultancies, launched a podcast, and is writing a book that will stand as a pillar of Afrocentric intellectual tradition. He carries the name of the world's first recorded genius, and he has spent every chapter of his life earning it. The second is an Egyptian innovator and technologist who lives on the island of Cyprus, a man who has spent over 15 years building digital infrastructure and is now deploying artificial intelligence to solve some of the world's most pressing crises, including the global water scarcity emergency. One man excavates the past, the other engineers the future. And tonight they meet on this program to remind us that these two things have always been the same mission. So settle in, because what you are about to experience over the next 2 hours is history, scholarship, technology, culture, and identity woven together in a conversation that crosses continents, centuries, and civilizations. You will learn things tonight that they never taught you in school. You will hear truths that academia has too often buried. You will witness a dialogue between an African diaspora and its ancient homeland, and you will be reminded, or perhaps you will be shown for the very first time, that your story, the story of African people, did not begin in chains. It began in a valley of the most sacred river on earth, at the dawn of human civilization, in a land its own people called Kemet, the Black Land. Tonight, from Houston, Texas, by way of Des Moines, Iowa, the cultural memory keeper himself, Dr. Negus Imhotep, and joining us across the Mediterranean from the island of Cyprus, a man who builds the future with the precision of ancient architects, Mr. Ahmed Dasuki. Welcome, gentlemen, to America in Black and White.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. How are you guys doing this evening? I appreciate you guys being patient here but being here because I wanted to make sure I did that reflection to the ancestors before introducing you guys. How are you all this evening? And is there anything you guys would like to say to the audience before we start?
Youth over age.
Okay, Ahmed, what would you like to say?
I would like to thank you, Charles, first for arranging this. I'm so honored to be on this podcast. And Dr. Imhotep, it's so much pleasure to be on that podcast and to meet you in person. I mean, digitally. It's an honor. Thank you for accepting to have a dialogue about a lot of sensitive issues that I would like to discuss and educate people about. So it's an honor to meet you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show and an honor to meet you as well. I read about you, heard some information about you as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know a lot about you. First of all, your name is amazing. I think your name is what triggered my curiosity when I found you on LinkedIn before we ever meet. And I thought that was cool. And then I realized that your name it has a story, and I wanted to ask you about that as well.
Well, feel free.
We'll get to the show. Go ahead.
You go ahead, sir. I don't want to.
Did you want to go ahead? What you want to? Did you want to say anything to the audience before we get into the show?
Well, I'm elated for the opportunity to disseminate information to the populace because a lot of people are inclined to believe a bunch of propaganda instead of looking at evidence-based data that supports the truth. And you see a lot of fake, like they say, fake news or fake information that's out there. So we're here to eliminate that.
So as we get into the show, like we start all shows, I like to give the audience the opportunity to learn a little bit about both of you guys. Where I will have pointed questions to each of you in the beginning so we can learn a little bit more about you guys before we get into this wonderful African history that we'd like to teach the world tonight. Let me start with you, with Dr. Imhotep. You were born in Houston, Texas, one of the most cultural complex cities in America. Tell us, who was the young Negus Rudison before the doctorate, before the podium, before the consultancy? Who was that boy in Houston, and what did he already know about himself that the world hadn't yet confirmed?
Well, thank you for such a intrusive question. I was born in the city of Houston, uh, uh, born with the name Claire Rudison at birth. My father was from Marshalltown, Iowa, and my mother was from Des Moines. And they left Iowa in the late 1950s and moved to Texas. And growing up, being a product of the 60s, uh, I, my father was a businessman. He had his own furniture business. He owned livestock, and but my parents really focused on academia. My father and mother, they always told us that readers are leaders, and I can go back from an instance when back in the mid 1960s when I think that was the Edmund Pettus Bridge, when people were crossing the bridge and watching the police beat black people down. After the end of the show on 60 Minutes, I turned to my father and looked at my father and I told him, Dad, it's not our fault that we're Negroes. And my dad jumped up out of his seat and he grabbed me by my chest and said, "Boy, you be proud that you're a Negro." And and I looked at him and I said, "Why?" And my dad started crying. And my mother came and held my dad and what happened within a week or two, my parents had purchased the Negro Encyclopedia, and that was my opening of my understanding of the nature and the history of Black people throughout the diaspora. So I that we didn't have Facebook or those other Instagram and all that stuff there. Reading was my forte, and my parents, they enforced it. My father's mother was a elementary school teacher here in Iowa back in the 40s and 50s, and education was always focused on in our family. So that was my beginning of my journey right there, and growing up in segregated South, we had fugitive pedagogy that was occurring because a lot of our teachers, school was segregated, but a lot of the instructors that I had came from historical Black colleges, and they really focused on us learning so that we could improve and work for ourselves and help our community. So that was my main focus to really delve into books and learn to read about things that even places where I'd never been, at least I could read about them and have my mind open to a lot of information.
So, Ahmad, you were born in Egypt, a civilization so old that it makes most of human recorded history look like a footnote. What was it like to grow up grow up with the pyramids as your backdrop, the Nile as your context, and thousands of years of human genius as your inheritance? How did that shape the way you see the world, Ahmad?
Sorry, the voice is interrupting. Can you repeat the question again? I understand half the question. I got half the question. The other half I didn't get.
Okay. You were born in Egypt, a civilization so
Yeah.
old that it makes most human recorded history look like a footnote. What was it like to grow up with the pyramids as your backdrop, the Nile as your context, and thousands of years of human genius as your inheritance? How did that shape the way you see the world?
It was kind of an inspiring overdose. Everything around you is pointing at greatness, and it was what inspired my curiosity to look deeper into the Egyptian history, away from the cherry picked things that we were taught in school, of course, because most of our education all around the world, and let me be clear, I'm not talking about a certain country or a certain education system or a certain government. I'm talking about the whole world. everything we're taught about our history is cherry picked, and there's so much evidence. If you don't see it, you're blind. So it triggered a lot of curiosity about what are we what are we not being told, because there's so much that is around me that is it is just mind blowing, and what we learned in schools does not match at least a little bit of what's happening. So I think it triggered my curiosity more than anything else.
Dr. Imhotep, you describe yourself as the didactic African historian, meaning you taught yourself the history that schools and universities refuse to teach. Walk us through that self-educated journey. What was the first book, the first moment, and the first revelation that cracked open the truth of African history for you?
As I stated earlier, it was the Negro Encyclopedia, and it was a book that Johnson and Johnson, not Johnson and Johnson, but Johnson, who had Ebony magazine, had this encyclopedia, and that opened up the doors. Yet my father and mother, they had a library in our home. I grew up in a upper middle class black family at that time because my father ran a furniture business and he owned livestock and he had other properties around the city. So I invested in studying those books, and then I had a period in my life, in my early 20s, that I worked with the Houston Public Library for 8 years, and they paid me to read. I just went and delved into books and read and focused basically on the things that pertain to Africana studies, because I wanted to know why. Because uh, here in this society and Western civilization, we see the disdain for people of African descent, uh,
Mhm.
and the propaganda that's taught through the American curriculum is pure propaganda. It has very little to do with the truth, because even with the creation of this country, the United States of America, they uh, did everything they could to eliminate the information about what happened in Africa with the great civilizations of. We
Mhm.
look at ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet is the name, ancient Kemet, but there were other great civilizations on the continent of Akibalan is the oldest name that's known for the continent of Africa. There were civilizations in the West, which was called, one was Darth Techi, and then you see there's great civilizations in West Africa with the Songhai, the Mali, and the Ghana Empire. There was another great civilization over in on the Horn of Africa in the area of ancient Ethiopia with the ancient Axum. And you can go down into the area of South Central, cent, Southeastern, excuse me, the continent of Akibaland, which we call Africa, the great civilization of Zimbabwe. There were all types of prop ups all over the continent. So ancient Egypt was one of the oldest known, because we can go back as far as 5,000 BCE, before the Christian era, when that civilization was started. Because I listened to master teachers like Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakanan, for instance, when he talked about the creation of ancient Kemet, when they said, when the valley of the mountain of the moons and the god Hapti, and the people came out of the central Congo Nile River basin and moved up out of that particular area from the Congo, Uganda, and went on up the Nile and came northward up the Nile, and civilizations were built by people from the interior of Africa. Because if we look at the monogenetic origin of mankind, the oldest bones of human species were found on the continent of Africa. And Africa, the continent of Africa, was basically the incubator for mankind. So all mankind was there. And it wasn't until around the 30,000 years ago where man left off the continent, 30 to 40,000 years ago, where mankind left off the continent of Africa and spread into Western Asia, and then later circumnavigated the planet. So
you're getting a little bit ahead of us right now.
okay.
Ahmad, you spent over 15 years navigating digital world, SEO, AI, software, business strategy, yet everything you build is ultimately about people, not technology. How did you develop that human first philosophy in an industry that often treats people as data points?
Hello? It's interrupting. Charles, can you repeat the question, please?
You spent over 15 years navigating the digital world, SEO, AI, software, business strategy, yet everything you build is ultimately about people, not technology. How did you develop that human first philosophy in an industry that often treats people as data points?
It's because of the environment that I was raised in. Especially Egypt and Africa, we don't have everything available for us. The environment around me inspired me to look deeper and try to. It established the philosophy of human first for me, and then getting around technology, because technology was the first thing that helped me understand a lot of things about my history and my background. And when Dr. Imhotep now mentioned Zimbabwe, I like the point that he mentioned other Egyptian cultures. This is how Arden is living in. It was technology, and it was how this tool is not available to us. How privileged people around us have this access to technology, and we don't. And then I dug deeper, and I used these tools to understand the African history, and first the African history, then the Egyptian history. So technology had a great impact on me educating myself, and of course understanding my history. And when Dr. Imhotep now mentioned Zimbabwe, I had a question about that. Dr. Imhotep, you said Zimbabwe is one of the greatest cultures in Africa, and I agree with you. I mean, it's the largest ancient stone structure in sub-Saharan Africa, and it has walls up to 1,100 meters. I think Europeans, when they came to Africa, they were in so much disbelief that this culture actually exists. So was that you think it was that ignorance, or it was just ideology from the Europeans when they arrived at Zimbabwe?
Well, they had if misinformation prior to coming. You know, you if you look into what was researched or written by one individual who I consider as the father of racism. His name was Count Joseph Arthur de Gobineau, and he wrote an essay back in the 1830s entitled "The Inequality of the Human Species," and he used this particular essay to state that the strata of intelligent people were basically came out of Europe, and everything that became darker was the lower people. and Europe was on, the Europeans were on top, and people of African descent were on the bottom. So they came in with this negative idea about who and what was going on in a place that they had never been to, and they were just bamboozled. As a matter of fact, I remember reading some writings where when the Europeans first got to Zimbabwe, they thought it was King Solomon's mine from the
Wow.
biblical context. Yeah, so that you know, when you're going into a place, and you especially going into the interior of Africa, because when the Europeans first navigated and got to the continent, they only hit on coastal towns, and had no insight on what was going on the interior.
Was
So
that during the
let's
1500s? Sorry.
Okay.
go
Is that
ahead.
related? Sorry, I have a question. Was that related to the 1500s, to the codified great chain of being that was established by Europeans? Because I'm trying to understand the first point in time back in history when racism started, when skin started to be a scale, you know what I mean? They started
Yes.
to use black and white.
Well,
When did this start?
okay.
Because going back down in history, in the Egyptian culture and in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, race did not exist.
Yeah.
Black
Well,
and white did not
I'm putting.
exist.
I'm going to state that it was Charles Darwin and his
It
theory
was,
of evolution.
uh-huh.
So Darwinism, and they
Yep.
had the idea that people from the interior were offsprings of apes. When every
Wow.
person on this planet, every person on this planet that's living today, DNA comes from the continent of Africa.
I just want to
Let's
highlight
move
one
over
point.
to the cultural. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to highlight one point because before this historical event, because of that dark event, there was also another event that was by, I think, a pope, Pope Nicholas, in 1452, who issued an
Mhm.
edict that declared that all non-Christians could be reduced to perpetual slavery.
Yeah,
I
that
want
was
to
the
go.
papal.
I want to go
That
with
was
the
the
chain of
papal
time
bull.
first.
Well, that was the papal bull of 1452 and 1455. Pope
Yeah.
Nicholas V gave Alphonse V, the King of Portugal, the authority to go into West Africa and snatch up as many humans possible to break into the Western world. But you have to take into account that during that time it was on the decline of the Moors who had conquered Spain and
Mhm,
populated and controlled Spain for 800 years. So
mhm.
that was their way of subjugating people of African descent.
I want to move over to cultural memory of Sankofa and the responsibility of the historian. Dr. Imhotep, you describe yourself as a cultural memorial specialist. Most people don't even know that term exists. Define it for our audience. And what is the cultural memory? Why does it matter? And what happens to a people when their cultural memory is systemically erased?
Uh, when your culture memory is systemically erased, you have no connection to your past. You see in America and other places around the Western world that people of African descent, some quite frequently, don't want to connect with the people on the continent of Africa because you've been misinformed about who the people are and how everything in Africa was black and backwards. They use the term black in a negative sense to
Mhm.
mean that you're dark. They called it the dark continent. Okay, during the period of exploration, because
Mhm.
people they looked at everything that the people on the continent of Africa did, especially from a European or Western scholarship or the what you would call the Frankfurt School of Thought uh, uh, delineates and makes the people of Africa history as a sub history. There's not even a something to research or study. You know, so when we get this Western propaganda to believe that everything that ever happened, anything that was good, it had to come out of Europe. It didn't come from the continent of Africa. You don't hear too much anything about Asia because the civilizations of African and Western Asia and Eastern Asia are quite much older than what Europe is. So they were the people of Europe were newcomers to information. As a matter of fact, they just got this movie out called The Odyssey, and everybody's going crazy over checking out The Odyssey. If you notice that book, Odyssey, the Iliad and the Odyssey, was the first European manuscript, and it was a man named Homer that wrote it. But the thing is that there were all kinds of libraries in ancient Kemet that are thousands of years older than what's going on with this book that came out of Greece. So there were newcomers, as a matter of fact. That's why you brought off in your introduction about Socrates, Plato, and Pythagoras, and all of them. All of those people made their way to Egypt, to ancient Kemet, to learn because they didn't know. They were superstitious. They didn't know anything. They came to the continent of Africa and learned, and then went back home to Greece and claimed that they discovered and created things that they plagiarized.
Right. So so let me just go a little bit further with this, because the Sankofa bird in Ghana and Drinka symbolism files forward while looking backwards. So I mean, that right there in itself, when you think about something that flies forward but it looks backwards, it teaches that we must retrieve what was lost in order to move forward. How does Sankofa function as a living operating systems for your work, not just as a metaphor, but as practical methodology?
As practical methodology, it is absolute. It must be done because here in the Western world, here in the United States, as a matter of fact, I teach Africana Studies at Grandview University. Okay, I looked at what they had in their curriculum. They had nothing at the university on African history or anything about the African diaspora. So I applied 3 years trying to get into that university, and with applications, I never had a chance for an interview. And then my wife told me, she said, "Baby, quit tripping. Write up a curriculum. Put a proposal together and send it over there to their liberal arts department." And I did. And when they looked at it, they said, "Hey, we come teach this class." I didn't even have an interview. They just said, "Come and teach this," because they knew what I had was empirical evidence. And they knew that they needed that. So they opened up the door and let me come in and teach. So, like you said, Black history in America, or African history in America, has always been contraband. Period. Because this society, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants who celebrated 250 years of propaganda, they call liberty and freedom for some, and not liberty and freedom for all.
Right. Do you think the history is still manipulated till today? I mean, in regards to the angle of technology, because I came across something today that has to do with AI models that I feel like the history that we have right now that is cherry-picked or manipulated is still being ingested into the new models of AI, and the information that the future generation is going to get is still cherry picked and is still manipulated. And I will give you an example now, because I wanted today to structure the history of the African colonization, what Africa was, what were the empires of Africa, and the colonization of Africa, and then Egyptian history, and then the colonization of Egypt on its own. But guess what? What the two most devastating historical events in the history of the African continent were not mentioned by AI models, which is the colonization or the slave trade by Spain and Portugal from Africa. It was not mentioned. They started with Germany in the early 1900s. And then I asked the AI model why it didn't mention Spain and Portugal. He said, sorry, it's an honest mistake.
Well, you know how LLMs operate. The computer doesn't, only the information that's put into it is the information that they can put out. And quite often when you look at Chat GTP and these other LLMs, quite frequently they give you a Western scholarship type of answer. And quite frequently, when I look at it sometimes and use it, I'll pull it back up when I listen to their conclusion. I'll add and ask the computer, was this conclusion biased? And then it comes back and say, well, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so it just shows you whoever's inputting the information is inputting what they want to hear, not what they don't want to hear.
What do you think we should do about this?
You and I need to talk after this show.
Dr. Imhotep, like you just mentioned that you teach, Africana studies. And so you teach African diasporic history and decolonial pedagogy at institutions in the American Midwest, places like Drake and Hawkeye Community College, where many of your students have never had a course centered on African history. So can you tell us what happens in those classrooms, and what do you see shift students when they encounter this knowledge for the first time?
Well, since I know from my experience, the vast majority of students I teach are Caucasian. And this course is a junior and senior level course. The vast majority of the students have no idea about the history whatsoever. And when they get into class, they said, well, why didn't they teach us this in middle school or high school? I said, well, look at who controls writing the curriculum. So the American curriculum has done everything to exclude and to debase any type of information from the continent of Africa. So as a matter of fact, they'll even to the point try to take the nation of Egypt off the continent of Africa and call it the Middle East. And it's on the continent of Africa. And there's no such thing as a Middle East. If there's a Middle East, where's the Middle West?
Okay.
It was actually the Middle East too. It was the Middle East, and when you are in England, which is a white colonizer, it's the Middle East to England. So the Middle West is probably, I don't know, China or Hawaii, I guess, Japan. But the Middle East started because of colonization, the British colonization. Yeah.
Well, that's why I always say there ain't no Middle East. That's East Africa, and call it a day. Stop all that madness.
If you look at the island where this gentleman is at right now, Cyprus, there were heavy African population on the island of Cyprus.
Definitely,
you go all the way from Egypt, Kemet, and go all the way up north to Turkey. All of it was ancient Africa.
Exactly.
Okay, all of that was, and then you can go as far back to the east. There's some statues in a place called Mizoram, India, the Mars statues of Mizoram, India. You look at those statues and they look just like the temple of Ramses, okay, the second. And then they have the nerve to ask, I wonder who created these statues. A lot of people, shit, look at the people. They're the same people. You know, who's gonna, when you have dominion and power, who's gonna tell you where you can go and what you can't do and where you can travel?
True. And see, that's where again, that's that misconception, that misconstruement that's going around, not just the world, not just here in America, but around the world, that all of this that's been retold is some made up bullshiggity that they're telling folk, and they're saying this is history, when we know that that's not the real history. Because I mean, just if we wanted to go back, and again, as we talk about historical context, as we get further into the show, I mean, what people are going to learn is that even before we get to this point, because some people still say that we never had the right to vote as Black people, and that's not true. And so, I mean, these are some things that I'm just trying to figure out, why in the hell are they not telling this real truth? Because to hear that we just got the chance to vote and learn to vote in the civil rights movement of 1964, 1965 is a lie. And the reason for the voting, and what has always been the historical text of that, is that we've always voted. The Black populace has always voted. That's what they took away after Reconstruction. That's what they took away, shut that all the way down until we had this new age civil rights era. But at any rate, we'll get through to all that. But I mean, it's a shame that history is being whitewashed like this, but this is why I appreciate the two of you for being here. Dr. Imhotep, as we focus more on this, on your historical context, your forthcoming book is titled From Sankofa to Strategy, The Journey of Negus Rudison Imhotep, subtitled Memoirs of a Cultural Memory Keeper, Public Advocate, and Afrocentric Scholar, without giving everything away. What is the emotional core of that book, and what is the comment or chapter that cost you the most to write?
Finding the truth. The truth has been suppressed, and once I found the truth, as you stated earlier, you talked about Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, the Senegalese anthropologist and archaeologist that did the work to show evidence that the ancient people of Kemet were people of African origin. But there were people that was before him. There was a gentleman named Antenor Furman in the 1870s, 1880s from Haiti, wrote a book called The Equality of the Human Species. And he wrote a book that was a common narrative to the book that I brought up earlier about the essay by de Gobineau to debunk that lie that Europeans were superior and everybody else of a darker hue was inferior. So Antenor Furman was the one, this Haitian individual who wrote his essay, is what Dr. Diop used as a precedent to do his research and study to prove those facts. But before them, even before de Gobineau, if you look at some of the writings of Charles Massey, Gerald Massey, who did research in the 1830s, 1840s, went into the continent of Africa, Egypt, the continent of Africa, and went through Egypt, and went all through the East into India, into Indochina, and all up the East Coast of ancient China, he also found evidence of Buddha being a very black person with broad nose and thick lips and curly hair. I have a friend, a couple of friends of mine here in Des Moines who are from South Sudan. And if you notice, some of the South Sudanese are the original Chinese. A lot of
Exactly.
people understand because I have friends here from South Sudan whose last name are Chin, Chang,
Mhm.
Ding, Ping from South Sudan
Right.
because it shows that South Sudan was really ancient Kush,
Hmm.
ancient Kush, and they circumnavigated the planet. So that just shows you that history and the migration of people came off from that particular area.
So, Pan Africanism, the political and philosophical movement that calls for the unity, solidarity, and self determination of African and African descended people globally, is central to your work. In 2026, with everything happening in the world, how, how alive is Pan Africanism? Is it still viable framework? Is it still a viable framework for Black liberation, or does it need to be reimagined?
I'm inclined to believe it's still viable. We see recently Ghana stated that they were looking at Britain and other nations uh, speaking about reparations for the transatlantic human cargo trade. I don't call it the slave trade because the people were not slaves; they were humans who were enslaved. And
Mhm.
and the thing was that I see Barbados has jumped on the bandwagon in the southern in the Caribbean to be in to collaborate with Ghana. I see Jamaica is jumping up now to collaborate and pushing for reparations to the transatlantic human cargo trade, but I call it transatlantic human trafficking trade. It was
Mhm.
human trafficking basically, and the work that was done in the Western Hemisphere by these Africans made Western nations wealthy. You know, it was a historian named out of University of Houston, Gerald Horn. He wrote a book, Born in Blackness, and during the time of exploration, they try to teach us in school that the Europeans wanted salt and spices and herbs and textile, and they heard about Mansa Musa and all the gold that was they found over in Mali, and that's what they came after because they were thirsty and hungry after wealth. They
Yes.
they understood even the Portuguese when they went into West Africa. They saw the civilization of Benin and saw how beautiful that civilization was. It made what they had back in Portugal look like nothing. Okay, all right. They had the great city of Benin and the Great Wall of Benin, which they don't talk too much about in history. That wall scaled 16,000 kilometers.
Mhm.
The British destroyed it in 1897.
Mhm.
A wall with moats that was longer than the Great Wall of China. In actuality, 16,000 kilometers is close to 10,000 miles.
Right.
Okay?
Mhm.
And this ancient civilization built that in West Africa.
So I want to put this question here on the screen, and if you would love to respond to that, I would appreciate it. This is from one of our LinkedIn followers. It says each state has a Department of Miseducation.
He's not lying. Doc has told the truth. Dr. Zell, he told the truth because if you suppress empirical data, you're miseducating people.
Right.
Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote the book called The Miseducation of the Negro in
Mm-hmm.
America, because the thing was, there was never an attempt to educate Black people in America. They wanted to train us
Right.
to do work for them. They didn't want us to they wanted you to read later on, because let me put it this way: the 1740 South Carolina Negro Act made it illegal for Blacks to read, and you could be killed if
I,
you found with a book.
I have a question about what you said earlier before the question of the viewer about the British colonization and the Ghanaian and Barbados initiatives, because I came through something that was very interesting, and I realized that British people, taxpayer, the British government, were still paying off the debt owed to slaveholders, not the enslaved, until 2015. If the debt to the perpetrators was honored for 182 years, what is the moral argument against honoring a debt to the victims?
Well, I'm putting it to you this way. My grandfather used to say this. He said, "Mama chickens don't take care of baby ducks." Okay, they take care of each other.
Yes.
Why would you give some reparations or payment back to somebody that you consider not even human being?
How immoral is it? And
Yeah.
if the British public know about it, because they are the taxpayers and they've been paying it for 182 years to the perpetrators, basically to the most horrible human beings on earth. Till 10 years ago, they were still getting paid for the most horrific things they have done to human beings, and that is not in our textbooks. That's not in our news. That's
Mm-mm.
not anywhere for anyone to see. And we're still trying to initiate an agreement about what they've done to us right now. And we didn't even get an apology from the, I don't know, the royal family of Portugal. Not even
Mm.
and what he said something pathetic anyway. But it's insane that they were getting paid even after what they've done to us.
Mhm. Well, you can look at another example that parallels that. When in 1802, Haiti got its independence from France, and it wasn't until, I'm inclined to believe, 2013 or 2014 that Haiti finished paying off his debt to France for taking their freedom. They had to pay France for taking their freedom on that one portion of an island that they once called Hispaniola. The western side of the island is Haiti, and the eastern side of the island is Dominican Republic. And the Black people of Haiti had paid reparations back to France for taking their freedom.
That Jedi mind trick will never set well with me, because that's exactly what that is. That's a Jedi mind trick. And they tricked them so to that point. How the hell you got to pay me to be free? So if I want to go up to somebody, I'm going to lock you up in some chains and then say, okay, now you want to fight me. Now you fight me and you win. Now you got to pay me because you beat me. Does that make sense?
It's another form of slavery, financial slavery.
I mean, that's just still how they're just taken away from folk. But the gentleman that had the earlier quote, the question that I put on the screen, he says here, I put it on the screen here. He says his story, and I'm assuming he's talking about Carter G. Woodson, is a perspective. Freedom is the first liberation. The second liberation in our is the first liberation. The second liberation in our is our unity. Okay, the book is the first liberation. Our unity is the second liberation.
Yeah. Well, he used the term his story.
Yes.
Okay, because his Western scholarship is his story. It is
Mm-hmm.
white Anglo-Saxon European story. It's his
Mm-hmm.
story. It's not history.
Yeah, not yes. Yeah.
Okay. And when
Yes.
you learn true history, it liberates your mind.
Right.
You come to find out all a bunch of those lies that you've been given were just what they were, lies. They'll tell you that George Washington chopped down the cherry tree and he was a very great man. They tell you that a cow jumped over the moon and a plate ran away with a spoon. Okay, and then we teach our children this bullshit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're gonna ask them, we're gonna blame them for regurgitating this BS.
Right.
So when you come to the realization and find out who you are and find out about your history, it liberates your mind. And in this society, that's why this particular uh, administration for this government here, that they labeled somebody woke, and they're anti-woke.
Mm.
They don't want people to critically think. We live in a society here that is anti-intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
People don't read. And then you got people up there in positions of power who are imbeciles, causing war
Yep.
all over the planet
And banning books.
and banning books.
Mm-hmm.
I have this question here for both of you. There's a powerful connection between cultural memory and technological memory, between what historians preserve and what AI systems store and surface. Dr. Imhotep, you preserve human stories through scholarship. Ahmad, you build systems that structure how the world accesses information. What is the responsibility of each of you to make sure the right stories get told, preserved, and found?
Ahmed first, because I've been talking a lot.
um, I think I don't have so much power, but so only the only tools that I have right now, because you know how AI works. AI works being trained on hand selected data by human beings, and I already tested this 3 years ago when I started to ask AI about what's their perspective about religions, and of course AI I believe in Scientology. Let's say so. AI made sure that it mentioned the word terrorism was Islam in the same sentence, and I was shocked. So AI handpicked certain religion, and he kept appraising it, and he was a little bit soft with a certain religion, but he was very against one religion. And then I realized we are in deep shit, and there's nothing we can do about it because this is in the hands of the most powerful people, and whatever they want to feed this technology, they will, and there's nothing we can do about it. The only thing that I can do is to be online and educate people based on historical facts. This is the one thing that I think we can do, and I was going to ask Dr. Imhotep about this because is there any initiative that we can do to be able to reserve the African history and the Black history and a lot of important facts about our history? Because I think a lot of things are incredibly manipulated and cherry picked everywhere around the world, either for financial reasons or for religious reasons or for whatever reasons. There must be something that we have to do right now, and to be able to preserve the history from manipulation.
Well, I've looked at some articles recently about a PhD from Princeton. Uh, I'm inclined. I don't want to desecrate her name, but I think her first name is Raoul Benjamin. and she has created Afrocentric uh, LLM, and to input data that these other systems are not placing in, so that you can have information about Africology, and to open up answers to questions that people have about what to do and how to find information. So there are some individuals that are on the scenes just doing work on creating different programs that will combat a lot of this other stuff that's being pushed around the planet right now.
So let's move over to AI technology and the future of human innovation. We're focused more with this to you, Ahmad. Most of our audience has heard of SEO, that search engine optimization, but you specialize in something called generative engine optimization, or GEO. Explain what GEO is and why it represents one of the biggest shifts in how the internet works, in a way that someone who isn't in tech can fully understand and then get excited about.
It's a huge monopoly, and basically GEO is basically generative engine optimization. Basically, people nowadays all have access to mobile phones and laptops and tablets. So instead of going on Google or on Bing, Microsoft, or whatever search engines, they just easily go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever large language model chat app they use, and they ask, for example, what is the best pizza restaurant in this area? So ChatGPT replies after thinking for a couple of seconds or maybe a couple of minutes and start listing what it found. Basically, what it found, where did it get it from? It got it from search engines that it's connected to. Either it's Google, either it's Microsoft, whatever it is. So generative engine optimization is basically classic SEO. And when you look at classic SEO, it's basically keywords that you need to mention for the search engine to give you the results based on these keywords. And recently we found out that this is a different issue. It was manipulated by the mother company, because obviously everything is manipulated. Either it's history, either it's technology that gives you a hint about the power and the manipulation of everything that we know of. So basically now, when you search on Google, instead of getting the 10 links that appear on the first page, you get a summary, a generated summary by AI that tells you the bottom line instead of scrolling down. And a lot of companies found out that actually it was also manipulated. So the websites that would show on the top is the affiliated with the mother company. This is basically another issue, of course, but generative engine optimization is basically what you search on AI chat apps and the results that you get from that.
So you founded 404200.ai with a mission to democratize production grade AI for small and medium sized enterprises. When people hear AI, they think of Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI, billion-dollar companies. Why do small businesses deserve the same AI tools? And what does it look like in practice when you deliver that to a small business owner?
Why small businesses deserve the same tools? Of course, small businesses never get the same exact tools, but again, I remember we talked about this in the podcast before. The open source technology. Always go back to open source technology. So that if you notice nowadays, there is a huge breaking news about technology companies increasing its price of using certain models after the U.S. government suspended it. So, for example, Claude, Anthropic, now instead of paying $20 or $30 that we used to pay a couple of months ago, now you might need to pay $2,000 to use it, and maybe more. So there's no fair access to technology when it comes to small businesses. But thanks to the open source community, who is a community of intellectuals and developers and programmers and really nice human beings that actually develop or clone technologies and allow it for public use for free almost. You just need to have a little bit of technical background to be able to set it up. That gave us access, and this is what my company is built on, is that it's mainly built on open source technology and the education of open source, because people everywhere can have access to this technology, not thanks to big tech companies and not thanks to developed countries. It's thanks to anonymous, amazing people and developers who build this technology and leave it and allow it to be available for everybody around the world. But the thing is that still this is available, and this is easy technology, and this is simple, and this is cheap, almost free. It's actually free. It's still not accessible to a lot of countries in Africa specifically, because the infrastructure that's before the internet and AI, which is computers and computer literacy, does not exist. That's what I'm trying to
So,
do with. That's what I'm trying to do. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to do with. I hopefully, if I become a multi-million company in the future, one of the most important corporate social responsibility, which I believe any company that puts corporate social responsibility, they must be serious about it. It's not just text on their website. Is to actually spend money on hardware infrastructure in a lot of areas, building scientific schools, if you know what I mean, just building schools that will deliver computer education and scientific education to underprivileged area in Africa.
so your intelligent water management system is one of the most socially important projects in this conversation tonight. Can you walk us through it, and how does it work? Where is it deployed or being deployed? And what specific communities does it stand to transform? Because this is not just technology, this is life and death for some communities.
Basically, I started this initiative, and the idea behind it is to save the most valuable source for us, which is water. And it's totally built on free technology, and it's going to be free for everybody to use if they want to use it. But we're still testing it. So this technology is based on a reverse engineered already, thanks to NVIDIA. NVIDIA is also one of the greatest companies on earth that actually allows the use of its technology for free. Not the hardware, of course, because it's the most expensive hardware on earth. Their software, a lot of it is available for free use online. And this is what I used. And this is what I reversed engineered. So basically, when Cyprus had the threat of water shortage and drought because of less rain and because of higher influx of tourists and foreigners on the island, we started to have water shortage, and we started to have real panic and real anxiety about that, because it was not very rainy season, and because of the climate change and the heat waves. So since I come from a country which has, we never panicked and we never had an anxiety about water in Egypt, because we have the Nile. We're blessed. Not a lot of countries are blessed with that. A lot of countries rely on rain and rely on very, very limited resources for that resource that should always be available. So since technology now is becoming easier and becoming somehow accessible, and it was cheap, let's say. So if we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, I would tell you it was cheap, but now it's not cheap. But maybe that will change in a couple of weeks, thanks to of course open source community, and thanks to China as well. We started to think about technology to help us save the most valuable resources, and it's available. And since it's almost free, and since it's easy, why not build it? It's not gonna, AI now can make you code anything you want, even by your voice prompt. So why not build a system that will help the government manage manage whatever water supply we have, whatever water we have. And the system was built on an NVIDIA system that was built for flood management. So we reverse engineered it to be water shortage management. So the system is built to manage leakage, for example, monitor your moisture percentage. It has a lot of aspects that when you put them together, it's going to help you. For example, the most affected areas are usually the areas that have high influx of tourism, because Cyprus has a lot of tourism. Last year they have 25 million tourists, and Cyprus population is 1,200,000. So this is a huge amount of people coming on the island for a couple of months, the summer season. So this is when our water supply becomes exhausted. So I offered, and this is not technology, this is my own brain. I offered, if these areas actually consume more water than the original population, why not actually charge them more for that season? And this was also integrated in the system. So I built a command system that's connected to the satellite. There's a Copernicus satellite. It's a European satellite that's free to use. It has implemented a technology called API. API is you can connect anything, any system with any system. So I connected that system with the satellite, and I built a command system. It's a bird eye view about all aspects that affect the water, the rain, the moisture, the agriculture sector. How can you control the amount of water you're going to supply to the touristic area and the agriculture area? Who's more important? It's the agriculture area, and all these kind of aspects. So it's kind of an intelligent system that will help you. It also has its own large language model that it's going to recommend, and it's going to help you build, let's say, a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. So basically everything is automated in front of you, and you make the decision based on that.
So, what's interesting about that is something that I'm sure that the island of Cyprus, or the country, however they want to depict themselves, is something that they find very useful. But
Or
with that system though, with water scarcity being projected to affect more than 5 billion people by 2050, as an Egyptian, someone whose entire ancient civilization was built on the Nile, the most famous river in the world, what does it mean to you personally to be building technology that addresses the global water crisis?
um, I don't think I feel anything about it. I just want to be helpful. I want to help humanity, and I want to be a base case study or a case study for someone else to be motivated to do what I'm doing, because I'm doing it with just effort, with minimal effort nowadays. Imagine what we can do if we can apply this on education, if we can apply this on other things like uh, agriculture and the medical field, and the things that are important to us, and it's controlled by the higher powers that are controlling it, because there are a lot of things that we can do that can put the power in our hands. And I think technology is getting us closer to that. It's giving us a little bit of power, a little bit of influence, a little bit of influence on a lot of things. So I think um, I think people need to start taking initiatives instead of waiting, because uh, this current period of time is very sensitive, and we have access to a lot of things that we won't have access to it in the future, and it will be also manipulated in the future, that we can actually use to help a little bit make an impact. So the most important thing for me is to make an impact, and um, to help people in need of something that is so simple, yet they don't have the privilege to get access to it. And my next shift would be definitely Once I test a lot of things, once I'm confident, my next shift will be on things that will impact Africa in a lot of positive ways, because we still have floods in Africa. We still have disease that is not being treated in Africa. We still have a lot of things that needs attention from a lot of people, especially people who have power and money. And I wanted to mention something about this. I'm not sure if it's good to talk about it or not, but the cut of the U.S. aids to Africa has affected the African community in a lot of horrific things, and that thanks to one person who harvested a lot of African benefits and a lot of African money, and he left the continent, but now he is destroying it, unfortunately, by some decision that it's going to affect the lives of millions. And this is something I would like to talk about, and this is something I would like to have an impact on to reverse. This is what I wanted to talk to Dr. Imhotep about, because to be honest, uh, back to the Egyptian African thing. Egypt is African, African Egypt. This is two things that you cannot take away from each other. So this discussion is already proven. It's a fact. You cannot deny Africa from Egypt, and you cannot deny Egypt from Africa. No one can say otherwise. But I think there are a lot of things that touches Africa nowadays that we need to also discuss, because uh, uh, if we cannot prove a certain point, there are other things that we can reverse. And how can we reverse Africa to it back to its glory? What are the steps that we can take right now? Because the African glory that we had, that we're so proud of, like the ancient civilization of Ethiopia, of Mali, of Nubia, of Egypt, how can we go back to this? Because it was engineered by the Europeans that we fail, because we were the strongest and the most powerful civilization in the world. They managed to destroy this, but the power is in our hand to reverse it back to its glory, and we have access to technology to do that right now.
Well, I see oligarchs that are in control of that technology. The oligarchs that run this planet are in control of a lot of things. As a matter of fact, I saw just a couple of days ago, Bill Gates uh, per- purchased the waterways from North Dakota coming on down into South Dakota. So they what gets me is to look at being human, to be a human being, to be born on a planet that you can't be born anywhere else, but you have to pay for your water, you have to pay for life. Here in America, they pay. You have to pay for childbirth. You have to pay for death.
Hmm.
You have to pay. You have to pay. That's that capitalist system.
Yes.
And that's what we see colonization and capitalism had created. And we're living in a system that is created by a few people who have a lot of money and a lot of weapons, and they're doing everything to control and to cut off the populations of this planet. They look at the planet. Many of the oligarchs look at this planet as being overpopulated.
Hmm.
So that's why what we see going on in Libya, I'm not in Libya, in Lebanon and Palestine, that they don't care about human life.
Mm-mm.
They don't care about human life, especially when a group of people who call themselves uh, the chosen ones, who are claiming that they ran from what Hitler did to them over in Germany, and they turn around and doing the same thing that Hitler was trying to do to them and to the
Palestine.
people. You're so wicked that when you drop bombs on people, you deny them access to food, access to water. A lot of people don't understand here, especially in the U.S., that when the one of the Holocaust, and when they say Holocaust, they only think about what happened in Germany, but there's been Holocaust all over this planet.
Thank you. And I wanted to mention this. I wanted to ask you a question about that as well.
What they were doing with these Holocausts. Germany came here in the 1920s and 1930s to investigate how whites were treating blacks in America. So Margaret Sanger, Joseph Mengele. Mengele was known as the death angel who worked for Adolf Hitler and was in control of the concentration camps and the extermination of people. They looked at what they were doing here in the U.S. to black people in the United States and took the practices that they learned here back to Germany to use on the Ashkenazi Jews, the German Jews. So this place is, and this society is, this world leaders are wicked.
You know, I just don't understand how is it that a resource that's free, like water and all these other things, how these folk can actually go now and, as you mentioned, Bill Gates, buying up water, buying up all the water. How the hell do you buy up a natural resource? And why are people paying for it?
Because we got caught up in a trick bag. That's what it is.
Oh.
That's what it is.
That's way past interesting.
I have a question about the Holocaust, because I am a believer the Holocaust happened. Of course, I'm not denying it, and of course, to all the Jewish community, the Jewish community does not represent, because there are a lot of Jewish who are against what's happening, and the Jewish community is not represented by the evil regime that's doing whatever they're doing. But back to the point of the Holocaust, because it always astonished me, why are we only educated about the Holocaust, why there are worse massacres and Holocausts that happened in Africa by the Netherlands, by the Portuguese, by a lot of colonizers, and there are actually evidence and photos of it, of limbs and hands and feet cut off by colonizers because they did not meet their target in whatever they were forcing them to do. Why are these not in our educational books, and I mean, why it's not talked about enough?
Simple. They don't want to look bad. They don't want to look bad. If one individual you were speaking about who was known for cutting off hands and feet, Leopold II of Belgium.
Yeah,
he was, and he killed more people than Hitler could shake a stick at.
Yeah,
and then a lot of people tend to forget what happened in Southwest Africa when Germany went into the place where they call Namibia today, and the Hero massacres where there was a Holocaust there.
Yeah,
and that happened before what happened in Germany. You can look at the Holocaust that happened in Rwanda, because in a few months there was over 800,000 people killed. Well, in Rwanda.
You know what?
So there's hope. That's what gets me when these folks, especially when they speak, oh, the Holocaust. Everybody only think of Germany, but people of color and other people around the world been killed like crazy.
You know, I don't. That I don't put much emphasis on, because that's definitely irrelevant to me. And I think that when it comes down to it, what happened there is what happened there. But with the help of the Western world, to take those folk from there and to steal land from folk in Palestine, place these people there. Now they came from Europe to go into East Africa. They planted them in a place from land that was sold from Palestine anyway. So when they put them there, they claim that all of the region belongs to them. Now, how in the hell does a European come over to East Africa and say, this is my land? And you claim a religion and a way of living that you know nothing about because you're European. But you learn the American system here and what they do in Europe when it comes to stealing, killing, and taking something that's not yours.
You remember the president of Egypt named Gamal Nasser?
Yeah.
Okay. In the early 1900s, 1920s, all of Palestine was predominantly black. Nasser stated back in 1948 or 49, when the Marshall Plan and the people of the Western powers brought the Ashkenazi Jews to Palestine and took their land from them, Nasser made a comment. He stated, "How did the Jews leave here black and come back white?"
I'm trying to figure that out.
Because a lot of people,
Okay.
a lot of people don't know that the historical fact that Jews come from Africa, Ethiopia, and Yemen. They are Yemenis and Ethiopians.
Yeah. Well, the Ethiopians, they call them Falasha, the Beta Israel, meaning house of Israel. So there's a lot of misinformation. That's why you're looking at the LLMs again. That if you put bad data in, you get bad results. If if you put correct data in, you get correct results.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I see in the chat that Dr. Neil Salel, he made the comment. He said, when you were born into a miracle, you tend to take for granted the basic human necessities. Okay, so the basic human necessities was already created for all mankind here on this planet. But as I stated, it's a few people with power and money who taken access to everything, all the resources
Yeah,
they want.
and they're being granted that too. I'm going to talk to you guys about Egypt, Africa, and the Mediterranean. Um, this question is for both of you all. Again, this is truly a historic moment. For Dr. Nagus, you being African American, and with Ahmed being Egyptian. With y'all sitting here with this conversation, this is like really a wonderful thing for. I hope the world is watching, because I think it's something that everybody needs to learn something from this. What do each of you bring to this table that the other could not bring alone? And what do you learn from each other?
What I bring is a unapologetic, unadulterated African perspective, a perspective that's being suppressed, a viewpoint that the power that be are doing everything that they can to eliminate. So that's what I'm bringing, and the thing is, I'm a, a gentleman now of age in my mid 60s, not guaranteed another second, but while I'm here, I'm going to speak truth to power, if they like it or if they don't, because all they can do to me now is kill me.
Yup. Ahmad.
Well, of course, there is so much to learn from Dr. Imhotep. I mean, there would be no enough time to keep learning what he, of course, his own personal experience being born in the U.S. and experiencing what happened and what was happening and what's still happening in the U.S. to to the African community, of course, and what the story that the things that he went through and what he talked about was his dad. This is something that he can only bring and he can only tell us. What I can bring is my own, and this is something I still didn't talk about, is being raised in Egypt and looking around me. And I was lucky enough to be born in a middle class neighborhood with a lot of diversity when it comes to black, white, brown, Egyptian, Coptic, Muslim, Lebanese, Turks, Greeks. We had all these people living in the neighborhood. And something that I didn't talk about yet is that how the modern Egyptians look at our roots, our blackness. We maybe the word black is what triggers them. They think of themselves as maybe I don't know, brown to white. And as I had mentioned to Charles before, that in Egypt and a lot of Arab countries and North African countries, white, unfortunately, is the standard of beauty in their heads. And this what really frustrates me because the ideology of white people was, I mean, it's in our like how they wanted to change us, how they wanted to manipulate us, how they wanted to make us uh, think of white as superior. This unfortunately succeeded, and it's in the minds of a lot of people to think that brown or black is not beautiful, white is beautiful. And this is something only me can bring from a perspective of an Egyptian who grew up in Egypt. And this is something that I would like to talk about as well, because I think what I read about that is, you know, let me find a question, because I think Afrocentrism is very criticized in Egypt, if you know what I mean. And I think, Dr. Imhotep, have you ever been to Egypt?
No, I have not been to the continent physically, but I've been there spiritually
It's
quite
it's it's
frequently.
this ideology is heavily criticized
I,
by the majority of the modern society, and it just beyond me, because as I mentioned in the beginning, you cannot take two out of each other, Egypt and Africa. Egypt is an African civilization. That's it. That's out of discussion. Period.
well,
Um, Go
well,
ahead.
if you look at ancient Africa,
Yeah.
uh, it was ancient Kemet
Yes.
was predominantly black. The Hyksos were the first invaders to come into Africa onto the continent of Kemet, into the
Hmm.
country of Kemet
Yes.
in its decline,
Yes.
after some of the latter dynasties. Because
Yes.
prior to that, it was predominantly very African, very. The term that they use in English is black, but and if you look at the connotation of the term, black means something dark, something horrible, something evil. And you turn around and look at the term white, you look at something that's they label as pure from this language. Uh, so it was stuck in the mindset of the people because, as we even state that the Arabs were newcomers to the continent of Africa as well,
Hmm.
because those people that were there were looked like those people on those statues that they have there in Kemet. They you notice that they break the noses off of the statues and the lips, and to distort the face, and even in Egypt today, they have people that are going inside of some of the temples and repainting some of the monuments different colors on the inside to bring them to a lighter complexion, a lighter hue. So it's for fact. I know from some of my friends here in Des Moines, here in the U.S., claim about the hatred that they have for people of darker complexion in Egypt, the people who are indigenous to the continent, and you can see right next door to Egypt is Libya, and in Libya there are slavery going on in Libya right now, where blacks, Africans from the interior who try to leave the continent or find work in different places are being forced into slavery and being sold right in Libya today, and Tunis, in Tunisia, it
Yep.
has happened as well. So uh, this is just the hatred of that darker you individual. So that it's not uncommon because to look at it, because it's been going on for quite some time. A lot of people talk about the Europeans and the transatlantic human cargo trade, without understanding that the Arabs had a 600-year jump on the Europeans with capturing Africans and selling them into slavery. Because if you look at East Africa, especially on the continent, East Africa, the Arabs had a major jump on the Europeans on selling human cargo. So it's nothing new. It's a continuation of a old historical problem. So
I
Ahmed,
love that this. Go ahead.
no, good. I was going to put this on the screen. This is in the chat, and have you talk about this. A. Neil Smith says he was in Egypt and as a soldier in the Air Force, but the Egyptians spoke to him in Arabic.
We are an Arab colony. I mean, we were colonized by the Arabs, and we're still colonized by the Arabs. We were never Arabs. Egypt has been invaded and colonized so many times. I think 12 or 13 times, but each one of them stayed almost a couple of thousand years. So,
yeah, that's why I said the Hyksos were the first group of people that came out of the north, that came into the continent. They were Indo, what you would call Indo-Europe, Eurasia, Indo-Europeans that
yeah,
came in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Nubians after them, and then the Assyrians, and then the Persians, and then the
Yeah.
Greeks. I
But
mean,
well, see, the
it,
Nubians were there way early. The Nubians
yeah,
came to Sudan, and it was a pharaoh from Sudan named Silko,
hmm
Silko. He was one who I think who came into ancient Kemet and brought forth a new theological, uh, a new religion, and they brought in Ra. That's where we get the term Amin Ra from,
yeah.
and quite so. A lot of people don't understand also as well that Sudan has 20 times more pyramids than Egypt. They're
And they
just
are,
they're
and they
small.
are,
They're smaller, but
and they
they're
are neglected as well.
yeah. You
I
see
saw them.
what the Arab Emirates are doing to the people in Sudan right now,
Yeah,
and because of that U.S. aid and other stuff, not that that's why they don't care about those people dying, because it's a bunch of black people.
hmm yeah. Why
They,
do you
they,
think everybody's trying to claim Egypt? Why everybody's trying to claim the Egyptian history? I don't get it.
because they know it's one of the oldest civilizations on the planet, and then they want to put their stake on it and say we were the original ones that was there. When those statues don't show it, that's why, like you said, after I was talking about Haiti in 1802, for instance. when Haiti defeated the French. 2 years later, Count Vony, who came from Paris to Egypt, and when they saw that statue of Khufu, the African king, that lion's body with their head, they went and got a cannon and blew the nose off of that statue. I was in school at Texas Southern University in the late 1980s, taking a class on antiquities, and we had a British scholar who told the whole class that the nose of the Sphinx eroded with the sands of time. And I jumped up out of my seat and I said, "That's a damn lie." And most of the students were hollering like, "Hey man, you shut up. He's the professor. He knows." I said, "That's a damn lie." And to a point to where they had to get security to take me out of the room. And the following semester, Dr. Yusuf bin Yakanan came to Texas Southern to give a lecture, and it was the book he wrote, Africa, the Mother of Western Civilization. He did a lecture on that. And after the lecture was done, I was just sitting there just in anticipation to ask Dr. Ben this question. I said, "Dr. Ben, I'm a student here at this historically Black college, and we had a professor here from England that told us that the nose of the Sphinx eroded with the sands of time." And I'm gonna tell you, that little old man grabbed that podium and he said, "He's a GD lie. He's a goddamn lie." He said, and this is the problem, because even on historical Black campuses, you got people who have the complexion like you, but their inside they think European, because they've been filled with nothing but that propaganda about Europe being first.
Not only the Sphinx, it was also the pyramid was script. I mean, the pyramid was also where limestone that was very it was flat. Let's say flat limestone was a golden tip, and I think during the Byzantine or the Ottoman Empire, they scraped it off to build other citadels and house of warships. But of course, that is nothing to be mentioned, and if you know what I mean, it's covered.
Dr. Imhotep, we kind of touched on this already, but I would appreciate if you can give us a full-fledged answer to this question, if you would, please. One of the central arguments of Afrocentric historians like Chika Diop and Molefi Kite Asante is that ancient Egypt was not separate from Black Africa. It was Black Africa. If that is true, what does that mean for the relationship between the African American community and the people of modern Egypt? Are we family?
To a degree. We all family because we are from the human. There's only one human family. And everybody, as I stated earlier, that lives on this planet, that is a human being, ancestor came from the heart of Africa. We see, like I said, those like the oldest known bones, like the one that they called in Ethiopia, the people called her Lucy, who dug her up. Those archaeologists called her Lucy, but the people in Ethiopia call her Dankanish, meaning that she's the beautiful one. So 2 million, 3 million years ago, mankind started there. And if some of these people even read, especially these folks who quote unquote call themselves Christians, if they read their Bible and get a true understanding of what their Bible says in the 2nd chapter of the book of Genesis, it says 4 rivers parted out. There was a garden that they called the Garden of Eden, and 4 rivers came out of it. And the rivers were called Gahan, Pasan, Euphrates, and Hiddekel. The Euphrates is still in the Mesopotamia, which is Iraq today. Hiddekel is the Tigris. Gahan is a name for the Blue Nile, and Pasan was the name of the White Nile. And the Bible said God created a garden east of Eden. So if those rivers are where the garden was created, Eden had to be Africa, because west of those rivers is Africa. So mankind started there. That was the incubator of mankind. So and they people don't read and understand what they read or reason, and learn to reason and critically think.
So I have a final question here for both of you guys. There is a concept in many African philosophical traditions called Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Mm-hmm.
And in ancient Egypt, there's an idea that individual harmony is inseparable from collective harmony. How does the ancient African principles speak to the modern world, to our politics, our economies, our technology, our communities right now in 2026?
Well, Ubuntu is a powerful philosophy, and a lot of people on the continent of Africa use it. And now in the diaspora, you see people are using it as well. But it's a philosophy, and once people come to realize that we are all here together, because there's no other planet for us to live on. Okay, they want to go out of space. Some of the SpaceX and all of these billionaires trying to fly off to different places around the world, outside of this planet. But there's only one world, and there's only one place for man to live right now. So we need to come to realize that we're going to have to learn how to live and work together as a body of of human, a body of people. Uh, Ubuntu opens up the door for collective collaborations of people from abroad to work back and come to help strengthen the continent of Africa. As a matter of fact, by 2050, Africa has the largest population going to have of young people on this planet. And these other places are getting older and dying off. So it'd be wise for people of the diaspora look for the liberation of the continent of Africa, where they could break away from colonial rule. And we see that going on right now in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Chad and Niger. The Sahel groups are getting together. You see other organizations like BRICS that is coming together to break away from the colonial grasp of European colonialism, because that's all it's about. It's about people, the colonialists. All they're thinking about is going in and snatching resources that they need to have their electric cars and batteries and our cell phones. Because looking at all of the coltan that is snatched out of the Congo, young children are dying from mining this particular stuff that we can use. This laptop that I'm looking at you on, and these cell phones that we're talking with, it is all because of some resource that is in the earth that the power structure wants to dominate the planet. So Ubuntu would be a beautiful diagram, a beautiful model that needs to be used to unite people of the African diaspora all over this planet.
Ahmad?
Amazing. I totally agree. Of course, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing you said, and I think also I would like to add that we also need to start with having um, we have our own African problems within our own African community and African continent with a lot of corrupt leaders who are running a lot of countries right here, right now in Africa that we need
Yeah.
to get rid of because it will take Africans who will make Africa rise again. So we're going to start with getting rid of the bad seeds. We need to get out, we need to get rid of them because they are giving the opportunity to the enemy to come and keep on destroying our continent resources, our people, starving it of resources, starving it of technology, starving it of access to medical care and health care, starving it from access to essentials that will make this continent rise. And I think this is the most important thing. And I think Ubuntu also applies on the concept of diplomacy. We did not start that problem with black and white and all this. These problems were started by white. And when I go back and I think about the reason why, and I think every African, every dark skin, brown skin, think about that why they started this because we are very powerful and we are still very powerful. And when you look at the most powerful athletes in the world are black, and when you look at the teams of the biggest countries in the world are all black, when you look at the Swiss team, national team is black, that makes you think who is the most powerful. It's us, and it will start with us to fix our beautiful continent.
So, in closing, do you? I want each of you to take some time and give our audience some inspiration and some motivation, and let them know how they can connect with you via social media. If you want to talk about, tell them your website, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Okay. Well, I want to tell you, I thank you for the opportunity to conversate with you, Mr. King, and with you, Ahmed. I really appreciate this time to converse on this subject. Uh, I'm optimistic that the truth is just like a seed that's planted in the earth, and long as it gets some water, it's going to grow and come up out of the earth, and you cannot. They do their best to suppress the truth, but the truth finds its way of coming back, and and I'm just thankful that I'm here in this time. I just doing what I can and praying that we can do something here to try to help the generations that's behind us, to help them come to the knowledge of truly who we are as people. We're all human beings, regardless of our complexion, you know. So we need to realize that we all need food, we all need shelter, we all need water, and we all need to learn how to treat each other with dignity. And that's what's most important to me. I know it might be utopian in thought, but that's my thoughts. Is to bring the truth, which is goodness, to the entire planet.
Ahmad.
Just all I'm gonna say is just learn. I want people to learn how to love and accept. Love is easier, but obviously on this planet, love is not as easy as everybody thinks. But love and try acceptance.
Well, as
One
I
more thing,
close, go
Mr. King,
ahead.
can I say one more thing? You almost made
Yes.
me want to sing that song like Stevie Wonder. Love's in need of love today. Don't
That one.
delay. Send yours
Mhm.
in right away.
Yep.
That's it.
I didn't
We
see.
need
I
love,
didn't see that coming, but that was awesome.
bro.
Uh, as I close the show, do you guys have a few minutes to stick around after I close?
Yes, of course.
All right.
I want to thank each and every individual that's been with us for the entire show. I thank you for watching and supporting. For those of you that are watching on any of our channels, especially the YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I would appreciate your support. If you could please subscribe to the channel, like the shows, enable all notifications where you're able to get and watch all of the shows live because you will be notified, but you'll also have the opportunity to go back and watch each and every episode that our great guests have left behind, all of the resources for each and every individual to learn about community building, to learn about love, to learn about history, and to learn about trust. What we learned from this show tonight is that we know, and it's a known fact, that historically what's being taught is not the truth. So that puts the onus on each and every last one of us, on mother, father, grandfather, brother, sister, all of us, to not only tell the truth, discuss the truth, learn the truth, and be about the truth. Now, this in no way is saying, oh, we have to be radical in this sense. But for those that have told the lie, we'll call it radicalness. But if the truth is causing that much of a problem, then I suggest that you look at yourself and you think long and hard. Who are you? Who are you? That's the whole entire premise as we learn more about Black culture as this world goes on. So I want to thank you guys for being here tonight on America in Black and White. I am your host, Charles King. Be with us tomorrow night as we have former NBA star Kareem Rush on the show tomorrow. You guys have a great evening.